Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a case so disturbing it forces us to question family, culture, and the meaning of so-called honor. This is the story of Layla Rahman, a young woman who dreamed of freedom and love, but whose life was brutally cut short by those who should have protected her the most. Imagine living in a world where every decision, who you speak to, what you wear, who you love, is controlled by others, where the price of disobedience is not punishment but death. Today we're unraveling how Layla's cries for help were ignored again and again, until her family's twisted sense of tradition led to murder. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Let's begin. Layla Rahman was born on June 18, 1986, in the dusty hills of northern Iraq. Her family lived in a small Kurdish village where tradition wasn't just a way of life, it was law. Her father, Kamal Rahman, a proud but controlling man, believed a family's honor rested on the obedience of its daughters. Her mother, Amina, though quiet and compassionate, enforced those same rules, unable, or unwilling, to resist her husband's authority. Layla grew up with 5 siblings in a home where joy and fear were woven together. She had a bright smile, big brown eyes, and a gentle nature. But even as a child, her world was confined by rules. No makeup, no speaking to boys, no friends outside the community. In 1996, when Layla was just 10 years old, her family fled Iraq, seeking safety and opportunity in Birmingham, UK. For Layla, stepping off the plane felt like stepping into another universe. The streets buzzed with laughter, freedom, and possibility. Girls her age wore jeans, spoke freely, and chased their dreams. But inside the Rahman household, nothing changed. Kamal made sure his daughters never forgot. We are Kurdish. We are Muslim. We do not live like them. The iron grip of honor followed them across borders. By the time Layla turned 17, her fate was sealed. Without warning, her parents informed her she was to marry a man chosen for her. His name was Farid Hassan, nearly 10 years her senior. He had flown in from Iraq, and Layla had seen him only 3 times before their wedding, once at her father's house, once at a family gathering, and once on the very day she was told, "This is your husband." Farid didn't speak English. He couldn't read or write. But what mattered to Layla's family was that he was traditional, someone who would control her, someone who would never let her bring shame. The wedding, held in a crowded community hall, looked like a celebration from the outside. Music played, relatives smiled, and guests feasted. But for Layla, it felt like a prison door slamming shut. On her wedding night, that door locked for good. Farid revealed his true nature. He didn't see Layla as a partner, he saw her as property. The abuse began almost immediately. He controlled what she wore. He dictated where she went. He beat her when she resisted. For Layla, the marriage was a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She was only 17, still a child, yet trapped in a life of violence and obedience. She tried to run away several times, seeking refuge at her parents' home. But instead of protecting her, they sent her back, repeating the same words, "A wife must endure. Divorce is shame." In that moment, Layla realized she had 2 prisons, one at her husband's house, and one in the family she thought would protect her. Her only escape would be to fight for freedom herself, the choice that would place her on a collision course with her own blood. By the summer of 2004, Layla Rahman was only 18 years old, but she had already endured 2 years of a marriage that felt like a sentence. The bruises, the silence, the humiliation, they had become her daily reality. Finally, one July morning, after yet another violent beating, she gathered what courage she had left and ran. She returned to her parents' home in Birmingham, hoping for sanctuary. For the first time in years, she felt the air in her lungs again. But freedom came at a cost. Her father Kamal reminded her daily that she had shamed the family. Her relatives whispered that she had dishonored them by leaving her husband. Yet Layla was determined. She would not go back. It was during this fragile period that Layla met Adam Suleimani, a young man from her community. Adam wasn't like her husband. He was calm, educated, and respectful. Where Farid had shouted, Adam listened. Where Farid had used his fists, Adam offered kindness. Their connection was instant. They spoke secretly on the phone, only twice a day, in the morning and late at night. Those short calls became her lifeline. Layla, who had once been silenced, now found herself laughing again. Adam gave her something she had thought was lost forever, hope. Within weeks, they began to dream aloud. They imagined a wedding built on love, not obligation. Children who would grow up free, a home where she could finally live without fear. Layla confided to Adam her deepest dreams. "I want a little girl with my smile, and a boy with your kindness." For the first time, she felt like life had possibilities. But the shadows returned. But freedom, for Layla, was fleeting. In early October 2005, she noticed a car trailing her as she walked home from the market. On other days, she saw familiar faces from her community watching her at bus stops and train stations. She knew immediately what it meant. Her family was watching. And in a world where honor outweighed love, being seen with Adam was a crime punishable by death. The walls began closing in again. Layla grew paranoid, jumping at every shadow. She confided in Adam. "They're following me. I know what they want." Her worst fears were no longer distant. They were circling, tightening. Layla was no longer just a daughter who had left her husband. She was now a daughter who dared to love. And for her family, that was unforgivable. By October 2005, the fear had become unbearable. Layla Rahman could no longer ignore the cars idling outside her flat, the men who followed her to the train station, the familiar faces in unexpected places. She knew what it meant. Her family was circling. Her time was running out. On October 12th, Layla walked into a Birmingham police station. For nearly 2 hours, she poured out her heart. The abuse from her forced marriage, the beatings and humiliation she endured, the constant surveillance by her relatives, and most chilling of all, her belief that her family was planning to kill her. Layla even named names, uncles, cousins, and her own father Kamal. She begged the officers to protect her, but her words, heavy with fear, were brushed aside. Police noted her statement but made no arrests. They told her, "If you feel in danger, call us again." Weeks passed. Layla tried to live quietly with Adam, but the fear grew sharper. One night, while walking home, she overheard voices inside her father's house. Her uncle's words froze her blood. "She refuses her husband. She has a lover. She has dishonored us. She must die." Layla's worst nightmare was confirmed. Her family wasn't just watching. They were plotting. In December 2005, she returned to the police station. Her voice shook as she told them, "They will kill me. I know it. My father, my uncle, my cousins, they are planning it. If anything happens to me, it will be them." Again, she gave the officers a list of names. Again, they did nothing. Her report was filed away, forgotten. This would be the second time, and the last, that the system ignored Layla Rahman. She had done everything she could, spoken out, named her abusers, begged for help. But each time, her voice was silenced by indifference. Layla had no idea that her final warning to the police, her desperate prophecy, would soon come true. By January 2006, the pressure on Layla Rahman was relentless. Her family's surveillance had tightened. Whispers within the Kurdish community painted her as a disgrace. And at home with Adam, she lived in constant fear. Every knock at the door made her flinch. Her father, Kamal, reached out with a calm voice she didn't recognize. He told her he only wanted to talk. He promised that the family would forgive her, that they simply wanted to discuss her divorce and future. For the first time in months, Layla felt a flicker of hope. She wanted to believe her mother Amina would protect her, that maybe, just maybe, there was a way back to peace. So she agreed to return. The gathering storm. On January 22, 2006, before stepping into her family's house, Layla made one final attempt to save herself. She visited the police again and handed in a written statement. In it, she repeated her fears. "If something happens to me, it will be them." She named her father. She named her uncle. She named her cousins. It was her final cry for help. Once again, no one listened. That evening, Layla walked into her father's home. The TV was playing softly in the background. Kamal greeted her with an unusual gentleness, offering her a glass of brandy. But something was wrong. She noticed rubber gloves on the table, a coil of rope placed neatly beside them. Her father's smile felt more like a mask. Then, his hands moved toward the gloves. Layla's blood ran cold. In that moment, instinct took over. She bolted for the front door, locked. She turned, smashed a window with her bare hands, shards slicing deep into her palms. She leapt through the glass, barefoot and bleeding, sprinting into the freezing night air. She stumbled into a nearby cafe, collapsed, and fainted from shock. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital. She survived. For Layla, this was proof beyond doubt. Her family wasn't just threatening her. They were actively trying to kill her. After her release, she went straight to Adam. They celebrated New Year's together quietly, clinging to the fragile illusion of safety. But deep down, Layla knew the truth. She had escaped once. Next time, she might not. On January 22, 2006, Layla delivered her final written statement to police. She spelled it out as clearly as she could. My father, my uncle, my cousins. They want to kill me. If anything happens, it will be them. It was the third time she had come forward. The third time she had begged. And the third time her warnings were ignored. Days later, her family contacted her again. This time, they told her it was safe. They insisted they wanted peace, that her mother wanted to talk. Against her instincts, and desperate to believe reconciliation was possible, Layla agreed to visit. That night, Adam tried calling her again and again. No answer. The following morning, her bed was still empty. Panic set in. Adam reported her missing. But by then, it was already too late. Police soon turned their suspicion toward her family. But they were met with silence. Relatives closed ranks. Neighbors denied knowing anything. And even her mother refused to cooperate. It wasn't until detectives planted listening devices in the cells of her father, uncle, and cousin that the horror of Layla's fate was revealed. The men weren't grieving. They were laughing, boasting, reliving her death like a victory. They described how Layla was beaten for 2 hours, vomiting from fear and pain. How she cried silently as a cord was wound around her neck. How her cousin pulled the rope tighter and tighter, placing his foot on her back until she stopped moving. They stuffed her into a suitcase, her body folded like an object. One relative chuckled as he recalled how a passing police car didn't even notice the suitcase, even though strands of Layla's hair and her elbow stuck out. For months, detectives hunted for her body. Finally, in April 2006, a breakthrough came. One cousin had bragged about a freezer in a garden. When police searched a Birmingham property, they found it. A rundown backyard cluttered with rubbish, and a white freezer sitting oddly among the trash. Beneath it, buried deep, they found a suitcase. Inside lay Layla Rahman, broken, silenced, and discarded. Her dreams of freedom, her love for Adam, all erased in the name of honor. Layla had done everything right. She had begged for help. She had named her killers. She had predicted her death. And yet, the very people meant to protect her ignored every word. Her family's twisted sense of pride had stolen her life, and society's silence had allowed it to happen. In early 2007, her father Layla Rahman, her uncle Arif, and her cousin Rashid stood trial at London's Central Criminal Court. The prosecution described her death as a cold-blooded execution planned by those who should have loved her most. The jury didn't hesitate. Guilty. Layla Rahman, the father, was sentenced to life with a minimum of 20 years. Uncle Arif received 23 years minimum. Cousin Rashid, who had tightened the rope around her neck, was given life with a minimum of 17 years. Later, 2 more relatives who had fled to Iraq were extradited and jailed, proving that even distance couldn't shield them from justice. Judge Brian Parker addressed the court with searing clarity. "You speak of honor. But what honor is there in murdering your daughter? What honor is there in betrayal by blood? This was not honor, it was barbarity." But in the dock, the men showed no remorse. Some smirked. Others looked away. For Adam Suleimani, Layla's boyfriend, the trial brought no relief. He had lived under witness protection, cut off from everything he knew. He wrote letters to her grave, calling her the love of my life, the future stolen from me. 10 years later, in 2016, Adam, broken by grief, took his own life. His final note read, "The world ended the day she was taken." Layla's murder became a turning point in Britain. Police procedures changed. Honor-based abuse was no longer to be dismissed as a family matter. Officers were trained to recognize the warning signs and to act before it was too late. But for Layla, change came too late. Her sister, still living in fear, hides her identity to this day. Her mother has never spoken publicly, and her community remains divided, some still believing her death was justified. Layla Rahman was just 19 years old when her life was stolen. She begged for help. She named her killers. And still, no one saved her. Her story is one of love, courage, fear, and above all, betrayal. Betrayal by family. Betrayal by a system that didn't listen. And while her killers sit behind bars, thousands of women around the world still face the same danger every year. If Layla's voice teaches us anything, it's this. Silence kills. Believe the warning. Act before it's too late. Asterisk.